Okay, sometimes I have to admit that my mind races ahead of my thoughts. But up in Canada, and partly, I haven't really titled this one yet because it actually just came to me in my waking hours. And another subject of the same purpose came to me in a couple of weeks ago. So I have to say that insight is real because I'm given insight. Most people are. And I've noticed that my insight has increased exponentially since my sobriety back in 1997. So, is there something to all of that? You know, drugs, alcohol, doping, moping, and mental health. Is it another mechanism for control? It's hard to say. But the evidence is pretty significant. And this isn't just a theory. You know, as an intelligent species, like I said, a lot of our information comes to us from other dimensions, in my opinion. And those dimensions could be just different quadrants of your brain. Because they do say you only use 10% of it, right? So what happens to that other 90%? I mean, yes, you have functioning organs and everything else that need to be operated by your brain, breathing, your blood, your organs. But, I don't know, the engine in this brain, and most brains, is pretty significant. And I'll tell you why. I recently just had a significant amount of work done on my truck. It wasn't a significant amount of work, but the cost was very significant. And I checked the oil after the work was done because we had a new distributor cap put in. And the oil was low, so I thought, well, I better add some oil just to be certain that I don't have problems in the future. And I went to go reach for the oil, that 5W30 oil, and this is what I saw. Let me just switch around here. Okay. What does that label say? Castrol Edge. Interesting name. But this is a Canadian product, as it states right in the label. See? Canadian Castrol Edge. 5W30. I have to say, with all the trepidation and suspicion of the establishment, there's been rumors and some FUD, I'm sure, about who truly is Justin Trudeau. Now, I'm not picking on anybody here. I'm just looking at what I see as being significant or coincidental. I'll leave that up to you. But the other thing that I discovered in my, well, almost 22 years of sobriety is that the significance in the intelligence of an individual does grow exponentially. I have, now, let's just do a little background here. 57 years old. Through school, I had a very hard time with learning. And I was also bullied. I come from a very large family, and that's significant in itself. You know, both my parents were not graduates. They did not have professional jobs, but they were loving parents. So when I think back on years past, I think about how I operated and went about my day and business before I became sober. And there's always this gray line of uncertainty. you question yourself more often. You become paranoid. You become significantly disproportionate to the majority. And that simply being that the only people that hang out with you are the ones that want to drink with you, or smoke with you, or whatever the choice of drugs might be. But if you look at it from an intelligence perspective, you have to think also about what happened when I began my journey of destruction. Well, if you see in the background there, you see that smoke flying in the air? Well, that was just a small fire. I'm using this as an analogy. In my younger days, I started drinking around 12 years old, and there's more stories to go beyond that, but for now, 12 years old. On my journey of sobriety, I went through a psychological evaluation by several different professionals, as you might say. This was to determine my capacity to work effectively in everyday business and everyday labor. And well, let's say it just wasn't it wasn't an impressive labor journey, but I did learn a lot, and I have many talents. And anyways, getting back to my point, when you think about it, and in my psychology and my own research, and also the psychiatric establishments that like to, are more authorized to make an assessment of your state of being. At that time, mine was not a very nice one, but that's neither here nor there. But in that psychology, I learned one thing that stuck to my mind, and it made sense to me. So this is why I'm going back to the other 90% of your brain, how much it functions and where it functions in areas that you don't normally think about, except in a state of maybe euphoria. Not talking sexually euphoric. I'm talking just an idea that comes, or in your waking hours, do you have dreams and such? For example, this morning, I had a dream of a humongous snake, and of course, I woke up from this nightmare. But to some, in different cultures, would see this as a virtue. They would see this as a what is the term they use? Coming of age, maybe, or fertility. It doesn't have to be the sexual fertility, because anytime you use certain words, people assume that word goes with only one subject. There's fertility in finance, in education. There is fertility in awakeness, an awareness, a special gift, or a different sense, like not a fifth or sixth sense, but we're talking seventh and eighth sense. Eighth sense, yes, that was a good show. Sense8, which was another one that was actually quite informative. Anyways, back to the psychology of it all. I learned that the most vulnerable time for any individual, male, female, is in their growing youth. That's when their brain develops and it starts to change to the adult version of you, or of me, or whoever you happen to be. And when alcohol, drugs, and other disruptions come into your life at that time, and this time is between, usually around, for some, 9 years old to 17 years old. For me, probably 9 to 17 in that area. So that is the most important mental health growth for a child to grow into. And I did not get that, which is probably why from about 12 years old, in another video about doping and moping, that was on the path of destruction, but not destruction only in your area or your immediate life and people around you, but in your immediate conscience, your immediate growth. This alcohol, drugs, and other medical, including psychedelics, also medical drugs, pharmaceuticals, that time is vulnerable for a person, a human being, because that's when you grow into who you're going to be for the rest of your life, is between those ages of 9 and 17. Now, because there's a hindrance for that timeline in your growth, your mental growth, even your physical growth, your social growth, very much social growth, your intelligent growth, mostly your whole being growth. And it is a dangerous state for many people today. Because alcohol, drugs, and other pharmaceuticals hinder your mental, physical, psychological, social skills, it slows it down to a pace that cannot keep up with the times. So that's when you have people falling out of social grace, who cannot cope with people, cannot operate in a social network. There's a lot of this you can research yourself, but it all comes down to that vulnerable time in your growth as a human being. Now, on a positive note, once you have rejected the drugs, the alcohol, the pharmaceuticals, and you allow your body to catch up with your mental, social, and physical growth, it can be done. I'm proof of that. I'm in a much better place, more intelligent, more aware, and more socially apt, I guess the word is, to function. And I can be very taunt about my reality. I can be secure in my reality. I can be secure in my sexuality, because as you've seen from my channel, I do have a partner, and he is male. So through this time of growth, it is the most vulnerable time for a human being. We've stated that. What comes after that? Like I said, once you have taken that step, once you have committed to a change in your own life, you can get back those lost years between the ages of 9 and 17. Now, it only takes a minimum of 5 to 10 years. That's a broad band of years, but 5 to 10 years for you to deplete into a non-functioning or unfunctioning human being because of your addiction to drugs and alcohol and other pharmaceuticals. So if it takes 10 years to uh, deplete your ability to function, then it is double that to recoup it. So it was at 33 where I said, enough's enough. Time to take back my life. And that's when my sobriety began, 1997, 98, in and around that November. So it has been over 20 years since my sobriety. And what I learned from the psychologist back 25 years ago made sense and makes sense today. So I function better. It's a much difficult and more different lifestyle or living conditions for this time of day and age, but it can be done. Now, in this series, I have covered Cloak and Daggar, doping and moping. I have also covered, is it legal? Because this next one's a doozy. So, in my waking hour this morning, and this is a shout out to Elon Musk, just in case you happen to look at this video at some time in your life. This morning came to me that it was about the Boring Company, and I thought, that's a significant. That will be a significant step in human evolution, or in human technology. But what scared me about it, which I didn't think I could get scared by it, was that I had this thought that if someone, a government, another corporate business, like for instance oil and gas, if they have ever come to you, Elon, and tried so hard to buy or replicate something like the Boring Company, only on a smaller scale, do you think it's possible for the smaller the boring, the longer the duration it could take, but it would also be a capacity, they would be capable of putting in oil and gas lines? Oil and gas has had its time. It's pretty much established. Now, if a person of any significant intelligence and truth and ambition to see a greener world, and of course less politics, that's always a wonderful start, could get away from that notion that oil needs to continue. So anyways, back to my analogy here. If that is possible, I can only say, question their motives to the extreme, Elon Musk. Because could we actually detect a Boring Company or a boring hole, let's say 20, 30, 40 feet below us, going and growing across a landscape with none the wiser? And currently, and past, Trudeau did buy a $4 billion oil industry in Canada, the pipeline. Which brings me back to the Castrol oil. And kind of a moment. Could you be detected, or could an individual detect that boring unit or machine going underneath them? Could they detect it? And, well, if they couldn't, then any amount of pipes could be put in the ground that we would never know about. Now that's the scary thing. Doing something that you're not aware of Because what I was going to mention is that a long past friend, or at least acquaintance, worked for the oil and gas company. He was a welder, a very, very significant and very important one, and very good at what he does. I mean, his lifestyle pretty much said it all. But needless to say, that pipeline going under the ground without knowledge, could it happen? Has it happened? That is the big question. I mean, there's been a lot of oil pipes shut down in the last 2 years, 3 years. Canada pipeline, the Pacific pipeline, and some other pipeline. So, I'll leave the rest to your imagination. But again, to you, Elon Musk, if ever you view this video, anybody who's trying to get information or hire you to, or requesting a smaller conception of your boring company drilling platform, question their motives and question their intentions, because that would be under Cloak and Daggar. By far, Cloak and Daggar. Is it legal? Doping and Mope-Ing. This is a 3-in-1 special. I'm your host, Dominic Raphael, and this is up in Canada. Because UIC will be back. So, call me the doctor, call me DR, call me Dominic Raphael, call me the UIC guy, doesn't matter. Leave a like, I don't care. And a comment, I'd be happy to read it. I actually read one today, which was nice to get. It wasn't for this channel, but for something else, but it was interesting to say the least. So, you might even have a rant of the day. So we got 4-in-1 today for my patrons and for my billions of viewers lurking in the tree lines. This is up in Canada. Cheers.